Hi, I'm Joe, and you're watching In Joke. This is a bit of a long one, so let's get into it. This is day 3 of Jenny D's character challenge, where we pick 4 fictional characters that jointly represent our character. I hope you enjoy. For the first character, I wanted to pick one that closely resembles Mechanos. So when I'm thinking of how Mechanos acts, what Mechanos does, the first character that popped into my head was Spindle Horses and Vivzy Pop's Sir Pentious from Hazbin Hotel. I believe there are a lot of similarities between the way the characters act and what the characters do. First of all, Sir Pentious and Mechanos are what could be considered wannabes. Sir Pentious being a wannabe warlord, trying to cause all the destruction, take over territory to become a recognized and revered warlord, while Mechanos wants to be an extremely lauded and loved inventor. In both cases, they chase after their greater examples, such as Sir Pentious with the radio demon. At the end of the episode, it's the scene that actually I think about most when I'm thinking about Mechanos, is where Sir Pentious challenges Radio Demon. I think the way he words it, the way he challenges him, would closely resemble how Mechanos would challenge Koensha, the person who inspired him to become an inventor. They treat each other on the same level, even though they may not be, and they clearly revere but also want to surpass their examples. Along with that, they both have failed inventions. I believe they are both great inventors, but their inventions fail at accomplishing their goals. Sir Pentious is not able to become a warlord because his inventions are destroyed and his attempt to usurp fails. While Mechanos, his inventions never have their intended effect. He goes too overboard when making them, and they just end up more destructive rather than his intention, which is helpful. In trying to gain the recognition that they both want, Sir Pentious, warlord yet again, and Mechanos, great inventor, they're both loud and attention-seeking in a way, to say, hey, I'm here, I'm doing this. I see those as their core similarities, and I see a lot of Sir Pentious in Mechanos. However, there are some very striking differences. For one, I think Mechanos does not really have a sense of shame, therefore he lacks a great sense of insecurity. He doesn't really have that much of an insecurity. He's overconfident in himself, not to really cover up any insecurities, but in trying to just accomplish what he wants to accomplish. He's not dissuaded by his inventions not working. He moves on to the next attempt. They both also are just completely opposite in intent. Sir Pentious's intent is what we would recognize as evil or villainous intent. He murders and massacres thousands of sinners to get what he wants, which is obviously a position as warlord. While Mechanos has the opposite intent. He does what he does to help people, even though his inventions may end up hurting them. And last but not least, their goals are entirely different, entirely opposite of each other. While Sir Pentious seeks to rule over his own domain, to become a warlord, Mechanos doesn't really have that kind of drive. He doesn't want to sit above everyone else. He wants to surpass his example, sure, but he also just wants to be lauded, respected, and in a way loved, I think. The next character that Mechanos closely resembles in origin and mannerisms is Rocket Raccoon, specifically the MCU's Rocket Raccoon. I believe both of the characters are very resourceful, Rocket Raccoon being able to build gadgets out of anything and figure out complex and mechanical ways out of nearly any problem. I mean, just look at the havoc he wrought in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 when the Ravagers, or at least Yondu's party, came to take him, or take the rest of the Guardians as well. Secondly, both of the characters are what I call garbage scavengers. They can scavenge through trash and other discarded material to find and collect components that they would need to build their inventions or gadgets. And going along with that, they're both fast builders. Rocket Raccoon can instantly put together a keycard a la Guardians 3. And Mechanos can use his arcane powers as an artificer to build contraptions within 6 seconds. I believe like D&D, a turn, an action is 6 seconds. So I always view like the action economy as an action is 4 seconds, bonus action 2 seconds. No, that can't be right. Sorry. An action is 3 seconds, bonus action 2 seconds, and a reaction is 1 second. So like in 4 seconds, he can build a cannon with his arcane powers. They're both fast builders. And then as for their origins, they're both orphans. I don't know if Rocket would count as an orphan. I think, yeah, stolen away from his mother, I guess he'd be an orphan. He knows the person who evolved him, I don't think raised him, kind of. It's really hard to say what the high evolutionary was to Rocket. But yeah, they're both essentially orphans, I think. And they both have a sordid past. Rocket Raccoon, renowned criminal. Mechanos Handasi used to work odd jobs in the underworld before Koensha met him and inspired him. So yeah, both of them share a lot of similarities in origin and mannerisms. But they differ in a lot of personality areas. For example, Rocket was reluctant to talk about his past, but Mechanos really isn't as reluctant. He doesn't feel shame for the things he had to do to survive. He just had to do them since he was a kid to gain just the minimal amount of money or resources to survive. It was only the deep inspiration given by Koensha that pushed him into this new kind of like life, where he now lives in a junkyard or is detained. He's currently detained and gathers materials for these great inventions he makes. Mechanos also does not have self-destructive tendencies. We went over like self-destructive tendencies with Rocket when he was in Guardians 2. He chose to distance himself from people before they were able to hurt him. But Mechanos actively seeks out people's like approval and attention. He doesn't do it in a self-destructive manner. He instead wants to help people. His inventions turn out to be destructive, but his intentions are always, well, in the best. He has the best of intentions, trying to just make something that will help someone else. He may just be a bit too overeager for that. And lastly, their temperaments. Rocket kind of tends to fly off the handle when he feels insulted or feels attacked, while Mechanos doesn't really... I think, find himself in a lot of opportunities where he'd have to fly off the handle. He doesn't have a family to be overprotective. He doesn't really guard himself against other people. He kind of wants to accept people and for people to accept him in turn. So he does his best to help people. He's not really dissuaded by anyone who fears or hates him. So he doesn't really have a temper or anger for them. Second to last, we have Overwatch's Junkrat, specifically the Junkrat from the initial comic series. Specifically, issue 3, Junkrat and Roadhog Going Legit, written by Robert Brooks and illustrated by Gray Shuko. This one has a surprising amount of similarities. However, they also are somewhat shallow compared to the first two. Like Rocket, Junkrat is also a garbage scavenger, something he shares in common with Mechanos. They both have explosive tendencies. While Junkrat's is more on purpose, more purposeful, he is an explosive expert and tends to blow things up. Sadly, he tends to be part of those explosions as well. They both have a sort of manic behavior, impulsive behavior, that, I don't know, doesn't lend well to moderate efforts. They go overboard a lot, but their manic behavior tends to get them into more trouble rather than not. Like towards the end of the third issue, we see Junkrat has to complete a job he's been given, and he kind of goes overboard because of his hatred of I forget what they're called, the mechanical race from Overwatch. Yeah, it's not coming to mind. But because of his hatred, he kind of goes overboard when doing his job and blows a lot of stuff up. They both came up from the lower class. I can't speak to much of what Junkrat, his status in society is now. He was previously part of Overwatch, so I don't think his status is very low, but he doesn't live a high-class life. And lastly, they're both inventors, which is just a general thing. I wouldn't call... Junkrat is more of a weaponsmith, while Mechanos accidentally is a weaponsmith, more so an inventor trying to make things to help people. So, while they do have a surprising amount in common, there are quite a few differences as well. Mechanos tends to be less intense than Junkrat. Junkrat is kind of on it 24/7, and while Mechanos is driven 24/7, he is not in a manic state 24/7. He is way less intense, easier to converse with than Junkrat. Though at the beginning of the third issue, Junkrat actually is having quite a civil conversation with a quote-unquote suit. Second, Mechanos is not an explosive expert. While Junkrat is an explosive expert and a weapons expert, Mechanos doesn't intentionally try to be that. He makes explosive devices, he's not an expert in them. And he doesn't intend for them to be explosive in the first place. Lastly, they differ in their disdain of the upper class / suits. Mechanos' inspiration and motivator, Koensha, is a noble. He's a baron. Yeah, that's right. Koensha's a baron, part of the upper class, even though a lot of the times he doesn't act with that kind of authority in mind and is the reason he's so personable. But because of this, Mechanos doesn't have disdain for the upper class. He has disdain for maybe some individuals, none of which would be apparent currently in his life. While Junkrat has a hatred for quote-unquote suits, these corporate bigwigs, the upper 1% of society, economically speaking, and actively has disdain for them. The first issue not the first issue. The third issue of Overwatch kind of goes into this. I don't know where the origin of his hatred started, but he starts off by saying maybe that suit ain't so bad, to ending the comic with, man, I know we shouldn't trust suits, or man, I knew we shouldn't have trusted a suit. Something around those lines. Last but not least, we have Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty. This one was kind of a toss-up between Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank and Rick from Rick and Morty, but at the end of the day, I picked the one I knew the most about. So, similarities for Mechanos and Rick. This is very surface level. They're both genius inventors. They both have this kind of like mad scientist kind of personality. Rick's personality as a mad scientist kind of comes out more when he's drunk. Mechanos is kind of a 24/7, I'm hype all the time kind of personality. He's always seeking to invent something, make something new, achieve something from the moment he wakes up. In doing so, they both make overcomplicated inventions. Another similarity between them. Rick's is more due to the fact that he wants to prove he's a genius, to show off his genius, while Mechanos, I don't believe, can think any other way. He thinks complex, finds complex situations for simple issues. The only time where it seems like he wants to show off is when he wants to surpass one of Koensha's inventions. Last on the list of similarities for Rick and Mechanos is that they're both prone to eccentric escapades. Rick constantly goes on adventures to fill his life with something, as well as earn money, gain resources, figure out new and exciting things that he can do and exploit. While Mechanos goes out to try and find people he can help, inspiration for his destructive but quite interesting inventions. These characters are very different, but some of the more noticeable differences would be the fact that Mechanos isn't nihilistic. He doesn't think that there is no point to life, so why not just do what you want? He seeks to help the people around him. He thinks that he's alive. Him being alive and him not being alive, it's not really a nihilistic point of view, it's just that he is alive. And he wants to gain acceptance, gain love, and the way he's been told to do that is to invent things, to try and help people. Koensha told him to try and help people. He used his genius to invent things that could help people so he can sort of imitate Koensha. Unlike Rick, yet again, kind of the same as Rocket, he has no self-destructive tendencies. While he has physically destructive tendencies, his self-destructive tendencies are essentially non-existent. He does everything actively to help people, not to distance himself from people, not to harm himself. Any harm that he incurs is completely by accident, either by negligence or by overdoing something. He's not as narcissistic as Rick. I'd say most creative types have a level of narcissism to them, a confidence that they proceed to use in their work. So while he may be slightly narcissistic, thinking only of the great accolades, respect, and lauding that he can gain from his inventions, he is not narcissistic to the point of destroying relationships and destroying himself. Last but not least, they differ greatly in the empathy they show for others. Rick's nihilistic point of view of the universe kind of causes him to not value a lot of the people around him. He only recently has started to gain a greater value for his friends and exhibit a greater value for his family. While he does deeply care about his family, he also has the point of view that they are somewhat replaceable due to the infinite amount of families he has that would act the exact same way. However, he does value the relationship he has with his family more than anything, and doesn't want that taken away from him. However, Mechanos actively seeks to understand the populace and the people around him in order to create things that can help them. In doing so, I think Mechanos shows a greater sense of empathy than Rick does. So there we have it. Day 3 is finally done. I can check that off the list now. It really continues to amaze me how well this challenge works. This day gets you to focus in on your character and his mannerisms, the way he interacts. It really makes you focus on how you should role play the character. By looking at characters that share specific traits with your own character, you're able to kind of develop this personality in depth and the mannerisms and how he interacts with people. I just think that's honestly amazing. Anyway, if you like this video and you want to check out the other 2 days of this challenge, please click up here to the left where I have a playlist of the challenge so far. And please click up here to the right where I have a playlist of all the shorts I've been making recently. And if you want to catch the next video in this series, please hit that notification bell and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and joke out!